Whether you're outside grilling, changing diapers, or just trying to catch a breath, the Young Dad Podcast is your spot for real conversations about fatherhood, manhood, and everything in between. I'm your host, Jay, and I sit down with dads, experts, and everyday men to talk about the joys, the struggles, and the lessons that come with raising kids and building a meaningful life. From mental health and relationships to faith, family, and the funny stuff only dads understand, YDP is here to remind you that you're not doing this alone. So grab a juice box, grab a snack, kick back, and join the conversation because fatherhood doesn't come with a manual, but it should come with a podcast. And with that, he calls himself a rebel who came back to church, a husband, father, and a founder of Steadfast Life. Matthew believes that when we stop being fully human, we stop cultivating saints. But what does that mean for today's dads? Men trying to lead, love, and live in a world that often feels at odds with faith. Today, we dig into rebellion, virtue, and the challenge of raising families rooted in faith without losing our humanity along the way. So, whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe you finally got a moment to sit down, relax, and listen to your favorite podcast, thanks for being here and thanks for tuning in. Today, I'm joined by Matthew, husband, father of two, and founder of Steadfast Life LLC, a faith based coaching platform helping Christians become more human so they can become real saints. Matthew grew up Catholic, rebelled against it, found his way back with a new understanding. Our humanity isn't the obstacle to holiness, it's the doorway. Through his work, he helps families communicate better, missionaries sustain their purpose, and individuals rediscover what virtue looks like in real life. So make sure you grab your juice box, grab a snack, and let's jump into today's real and honest conversation with Matthew. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Hey Jay, thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Excited to have you. So I guess today I wanna go through your story, talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the good, all the things in between. Kind of take us back to the beginning. You said you were raised Catholic, but you had a rebellious streak. What did that look like for you growing up?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I wouldn't say that I had a rebellion in the typical sense. Most people, when they think rebellion, they think, I went off and lived a secular life or whatever the heck. But usually what it was for me was that I kept finding myself just not liking being told what to do. And so both my parents worked for the church. And so I grew up my dad has a master's degree in theology. So I grew up having really deep philosophical, theological conversations. So growing up for me, my faith was very much intellectual. I thought it was a cool subject, but besides that, not really personal. And so, as I got older, influenced by my peers, a lot of them weren't really practicing Catholics at school. So I, wanting to fit in, wanting to belong, just said, maybe I didn't say this literally, but I guess, looking back, I kind of said, maybe this can just be a really cool subject, but, it doesn't have to affect my lifestyle. And so I'd start swearing, I'd start saying innuendos, whatever it was. But yeah, I saw virtue and I saw a lot of the rules as rules. I saw them as just like things that constricted me. It was really interesting. I agreed with a lot of them, but I still felt like I was being constricted, like giving up like whatever the heck for Lent. And I'm halfway through and I'm like, I just want the cupcake. Like, why? This is stupid, And so it was about when I was 14 that I had a really profound encounter with Christ. My cousin, strong-armed me, if you will. Not really, but kind of to get me to go to a retreat where I just really encountered Christ through prayer and felt like the Father was actually proud of me, which was, not something that I was super familiar with. Great dad, but just I don't know if he had said it or if I just missed it. But yeah, it was really profound when I heard that. And so that began a long journey of struggling with my own brokenness because diagnosed with ADHD when I was 17. And so, I just always struggled to do the thing that I know I want to do. Not just doing the right thing even if I don't want to. It's like, no, I actually want to do this thing, but still struggling to do it. And so I found that I was like this interior rebel where I would rebel against the things that even I wanted to do. Or if someone asked me to do something, I would just say, like, I don't want to do that, So along with that, I saw virtue as just like this abstract, like, do good behavior. And so I don't like being told what to do. So I thought virtue was stupid. And so, fast forwarding, I'm a missionary for 2 years after high school, developed a really deep prayer life. I was in the Catholic seminary for a year. And after that, I studied at Ave Maria University, studying psychology. But I kept advancing in my spiritual life, but I still struggled in my human life where I kept procrastinating. I kept, waking up late. I kept, having a streak of working out and then stopping, just stuff like that. And it wasn't until I discovered, honestly, pretty recently, something called the Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, where she talks about how we respond to expectations. And I've really begun to realize that my rebelliousness is actually like a strong suit that if I lean into, I can actually grow in courage, and that the Lord has made me to be courageous. And I've come to learn that the virtues, actually, quick question. Do you know why there are four cardinal virtues?
I don't. I personally don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know this either. So apparently, when Aristotle was coming up with the four virtues way back when, he asked himself, what are the four areas of human life? Your thoughts, your desires, your fears, and your actions or your interactions. Can you think of anything else besides those categories?
Your thoughts, your desires,
And your
your
fears and your actions and interactions.
the only other thing I could think of that's just not really on there is just like your emotions. But
Yeah, and I guess that would be kind of like your desires and your fears, right?
okay,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. So, how do we think well? Prudence. How do we desire well? Temperance. How do we manage our fears well? Fortitude. How do we act and interact well? Justice. And so I realized that it's actually about being fully human. Like, that's what it means to be Christian or Catholic, that it means to be fully human. And so this huge journey of just realizing like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't like this separate thing. This is actually integral to me living a happy life, is me being fully human and growing in virtue and like being able to think well and desire well and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. I mean, we're human at the end of the day, right? That's all we are. We're just humans. And we only can do so much. And oftentimes it is really hard to, you know, what am I trying to put together here in my head? It is hard to lean in to all the things that the Bible's trying to teach us. It's hard to do all the things right 100% of the time. And
Yeah.
we get frustrated, we get upset. We're like, ah, can't do it kind of thing. And so what's the point of even doing it kind of thing? But I think when you flip that and you accept that you're human, you accept that you're going to make mistakes, it can get easier and you can use those things to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
It's all like a very interesting perspective here that you're talking about. So yeah, no, it makes sense. It's making sense to me the more you
Yeah,
kind
and,
of get into it.
and even in my prayer this morning, I was praying. I think it was First Corinthians. I don't know. It was Saint Paul talking, but he was saying, I boast of my weakness because when I am powerless, that I am strong. And I was grappling with that this morning, and I'm like, I could make sense of that, but it still doesn't make tons of sense. But even like what you're saying is part of that, I think. When we actually embrace our humanity, when we accept reality as it is, and we stop trying to fight against reality, in a real way, it's like choosing your fight. What do you actually want to fight against? What do you actually want to rebel against? And when we accept that, then we can actually become even stronger because we recognize in our humanity we're weak. I snap back at my wife sometimes. I don't want to change the diaper, whatever it is. But when we accept that, we allow God's grace to enter into our life. I specifically noticed that when we got married, not that we were like a bad couple, but before then, there was less desire to be patient with her. I got married and I felt the grace. The desire to be patient with her was there. It was so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I think it's something that we fall into a lot is we can either enter into like an emotionalism or a behaviorism, where we think faith is all about emotions, where it's like, no, it's about feeling happy, or we could think it's about just doing the right behavior. And I think both of them leave out the human person. And when you actually accept your own humanity, then you can actually work with reality because you can't grow outside of reality.
Yeah. No, and I think another way to put it too is right is like you're just kind of you're submitting to the will of things for how they are. Because the more you're
Mm-hmm.
pushing, the more you're hedging, the more you're trying to protect against, the more you're trying to make sure you're acting right, doing right, or, intentionally doing wrong, things like that, the more you're still pushing back and resisting. But when you give in to, like you're saying here, that humanity of yourself, then it's a lot easier because you're accepting that part of it, right? You're giving up that part of it and you're understanding, okay, I'm human. I can't do this. I'm gonna struggle, but I'm flawed. But I do have strengths and I do want to do right. I do want to do good, but I'm also submitting myself at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing too is like temperance, for example, struggles a lot. That's like my worst. That's my worst virtue. And I always thought that like if I could just get better at temperance, if I could just, and I thought of temperance as like reining it in, tempering it. if I could just get better at temperance, then I can be like a good virtuous person. I can be kind of balanced. But what I found is that I think each person has like a champion cardinal virtue. Some people are fertile ground for thinking really well. Some people are and seeing reality as it is. Some people are really fertile ground for justice and really wanting to put other people first. Some people are really balanced, and temperance is their strong suit. And some people are just, like me, kind of rebels, and fortitude is where we can step into. And so what I found is that when I step into fortitude, I actually become more temperate, because for me, if I don't have a cause that I believe in, I don't care enough to desire well. I don't mind staying up late on Instagram because what's the point? You know what I mean? Why does it matter? But if I have a cause that I believe in that really unifies my life, then I can do a lot more than if I just really focus on, no, I just have to behave well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You gotta have a purpose. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
also just like how we're created as men, right? Like we have to have purpose
Mm-hmm.
in our lives. Like it's very easy to have a meaningless life and for things not to have meaning, but when we find things that have meaning, especially as men, like we're happier, right? We find those things that inspire us, that get us going, I guess, for lack of a better term, but they get us going, they get us excited, they give us that purpose, they give us that drive, that motivation to be doing something better, to be engaged in something that's, bigger than us. But we have to have a purpose, right? And I think that goes beyond just men. I think it's a human thing, right? Like us
Absolutely.
as humans, we love purpose. We like to have purpose. We like to know that we're making a difference, or we like to know that we're engaged in something, or we like to know that we're fighting for something, or we're engaged in a cause, right? Because that cause, whatever it is, makes us feel good at the end. The people that are running the operation are telling us, "Oh, you're doing great. You're doing the right thing. You're so good. Oh my gosh, look at you." We're getting that praise, and then those dopamine hits, and it all just feels really good at the end of the day.
Yeah, and there's a really cool book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before,
Mm.
but he was a Jewish psychiatrist during World War II, and he was in Auschwitz. And the whole book is about his experience and kind of what he learned from it all. And what he found, to boil it down, is that the men who had a reason to live were the ones that ended up living, and the ones who didn't, even if they were physically strong, those are the ones that died. Obviously putting aside the atrocities that went on, gas chambers and all that kind of stuff, but the people who were just trying to live, the ones who actually had meaning and a sense of purpose, were the ones that made it. And I think, how does that translate to each person? Some people, I think, are more self-motivated. They find a cause, they have an idea, and they want to pursue it. And other people are more other motivated. If you think about, maybe certain parents or whatever, they may not step up for themselves, but if their kid is involved, they'll step up for it, right? And so I think that's part of it too, is recognizing that not everyone is super self-motivated, not everyone is other motivated, but if we can lean into our strength, our tendencies, if you will, that's where we can find true meaning. But the problem with that, though, is that if we don't, and this is what I'm learning, if we don't actually grow and like learn about virtue, and I have a lot of books I could recommend, but if we don't learn about virtue, it's really easy to get fooled. And I think personally, me being like having a rebellious nature, I got fooled all the time because I didn't ask myself, wait a minute, am I being manipulated right now? Or am I fighting for a cause? Because the devil, super subtle, he'll get in there and he'll try to get you to, he'll try to engage my rebellious tendency against the people that I want to fight for, or against the cause that I want to fight for. Because I see it as, no, I don't want to be told what to do. But in reality, I'm being manipulated without realizing it. And so I think that's why it's so important to really recognize, okay, am I other motivated or am I self motivated? And if so, what is the way that I can actually find flourishing and the flourishing of others? And I think that's really the virtues, which I used to hate.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and it's, the motivation's everything, right? Like we have to have a motivation of some kind. And it's not just, that external motivation, right? There also has to be, you can be extrinsically motivated, right? Kind of like you're talking about that other motivated, right? Like other things motivate me, but it doesn't come from within myself to do it. Or you can be intrinsically motivated, which I think is I don't think, I know it's a better type of motivation because it's truly coming from within. Yes, external motivation or eccentric motivation,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
fine, just fine. But intrinsic motivation, that's when it's really, got some fire behind it and you're really pushing.
Right. And that's the thing. If you're other motivated, then that means you need to figure out what you want to pursue and then develop systems of accountability, develop relationships that can help you pursue those things that you want to pursue.
Yeah, 100%. Um, and then we'll kind of talk about pursuing things. Let's talk about you starting your own business at 25, right
Yeah.
after becoming a dad. What a great segue you laid for me there. I love that.
Yeah.
What was that like? You just became a dad. You're 25, so your frontal lobe just barely developed. What was that leap of faith like?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was in social work at the time, married for about a year, and I felt like my hands were tied behind my back because I couldn't really bring up Jesus or even just like that framework of virtue and, a common ground of what's right and wrong. And along with that, I would go into houses, particularly when so I was in outpatient care. And so I'd go into houses, and if it was a kid that I was working with, the parents would typically want me to help them with anger issues and obedience issues. And I was like, oh, that's fair. Like they have those issues. But I'd go to the house and it'd be during dinner time and the kids would be eating at the table and the parents would be eating in the living room, watching a movie or playing video games. And I'm like, whoa, there is a breakdown in the family right now. And these people just need like somebody to point it out and help them along the way, like a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd always come home from work, not always, but a lot of the time, like with my AirPods in, talking to a buddy, helping them through something. And my wife said two things to me. One, she said, Matthew, I love it when you come home on the phone because you're so alive and you're just so you helping other people. The other thing she said was, can you make money doing that? I was like, geez, I never thought about it. So I looked into coaching, struggled with motivation. Again, I'm not like a self-motivated person in the sense of being super disciplined. Again, it has to be a deep, meaningful cause for me to actually get going. And so I struggled a lot. I had like half a website. My daughter was born, and like a week or two later, something, I don't know, pretty quickly after. And I was praying with, forget which gospel, but it was the flight to Egypt, Joseph and Mary and Jesus fleeing to Egypt. And I had an image of St. Joseph, and I was just pondering his fatherhood. And I was thinking, wow, Joseph, like you had doubts, it's accounted in scripture, but when you had a dream that you believed in, literally, and you went to Egypt where you didn't know anybody, they didn't practice your faith, they didn't speak your religion, you didn't have a job lined up, you didn't have a house lined up, but you had a postpartum wife and a newborn son. And I was like, wow, any doubts Joseph had to have been totally gone by the time Egypt was over. And so I'm sitting with that and just sitting in that consolation. And not audibly, but I heard the Father say to me, flee to Egypt. And I was like, what the heck does that mean? And so I brought it to my wife. I gave her some reasons, but she was the one that actually said, well, what if he's calling you to jump full time into life coaching? And I was like, I had that thought too, but that's crazy stupid because I have half a website, no leads, no prospects, like no idea what I'm doing. And a couple weeks later, before that, I was like, okay, we have to pray about this. And so we talked it over. We prayed about it. We talked to some friends. Within a week, I quit my job because I was like, all right, I believe this is what the Lord's calling me to do. I have to do it. Or I want to do it, I had nothing, half a website. A couple of weeks go by, and the ministry group that I had, been a missionary with back in, right out of high school, I ran into the alumni coordinator, long story short, and she said, Matthew, good to see you. What are you up to? And I told her I was, starting a coaching business particularly for Catholics, but, whoever. And told her that I wanted to help missionaries get back to regular life after their missionary year. And she's like, oh my gosh, we need to talk. So we talked. And then to quote her, she said, I think it's divinely appointed that we partner with you. I was like, sweet, like that's crazy. And I went to their end of the year wrap up week where all the missionaries come back and kind of debrief a little bit. And that happened to be the week that the directors from the international branches, if you will, were in town. And I had served with the Ireland branch. And so he came up to me and said, Matthew, good to see you. What are you up to? And I told him, and he said, we need that too. So then, this past year, they flew me out to Ireland, which was so cool. And so it's been a roller coaster, don't get me wrong, emotionally and financially, but it's just been clear stuff like that where the Lord is like, yeah, this is where I want you. Even like a year ago, we didn't have enough money for September's rent, okay? And what happened was it got to be the end of August, super stressed. My vision was permanently affected from that month of how stressed I was because I saw the numbers, wasn't going to work out. And I called my mom. It was her birthday, August 31st. We're talking, and she asked me how I'm doing. And I tell her a little bit. I'm like, yeah, we're struggling financially, but things are tight. I didn't want to say anything. Yeah. I wasn't trying to fish, And my dad happened to be there. And my mom looked at my dad and she said, can we tell him? And I was like, what are you talking about? And I don't want to say how much money out of respect for them, but they said, we want to give you some money because, we really believe in you. And my dad specifically said, Matthew, I know that I was pretty cautious when you first told me about this whole coaching thing, but the more I've talked to you, the more I've realized that what you're doing is very meaningful and very necessary. and I want you to succeed. And that's why we're giving you this money. And so the day before rent was due, I had enough money for rent because, God was just taking care of me in that way. And so I wouldn't trade that month for the world because my faith, it was already real, but it became so much deeper because I don't think you can have the deepest faith that you can have unless you have a time when it really is either do or die.
Yeah, when your
You
back's
know what I mean?
absolutely against the wall and you have the other wall like closing in on you,
Yeah.
and it closes and it stops right as it's like starting. It's like in a cartoon, like right as
Well, it's
it's
like a Star Wars.
yeah, like you're up against this wall here, right? And you're the microphone, or the space is a microphone, and the other
Yeah.
wall is closing in, and it just
Right.
barely touches your nose, the tip of your nose, or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
large. For me, it would be my belly, but other than
Mm-hmm.
that, it touches that part that's furthest out from you on you against the other wall, and it stops completely, and you're like,
Yeah.
what just happened? And you open your
Yeah.
eyes, and you're not smushed, you're still alive.
Yeah, yeah. And so and what a cool time too, like for my dad to say that. Like that was super meaningful for me. For my dad to tell me, "Hey, I believe in what you're doing and I want you to succeed." And even just, as far as like how I've known this is where the Lord wants me. All those crazy stuff, but then also just like the fruit from my coaching sessions. There was a guy who wanted to quit weed. After one session, besides like one relapse, he stopped. There was a girl that I was coaching who had panic attacks every day. After a couple of months, she had zero panic attacks. And we even checked in like 3, 6 months later, and she still hadn't had any, maybe like one, but like no more panic attacks. Helping guys with pornography and masturbation issues, like seeing huge results. One guy even said, like, Matt, like this is the first thing that's ever actually worked for me. And I think that's kind of the whole point that I was making at the start is like, we can't actually grow in virtue unless we do it in light of our personality, in light of how we're motivated. Because if we just try to adopt a certain behavior, it's probably not going to work. For most people, that's not going to work. And so, really, what coaching is helping people to know more about themselves so they can actually grow in light of their personality, in light of their own humanity, and not just, feel bad about themselves for not being able to do the things they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to like understand that, right? Because you can do it. You just have to find the right path to do it, right? And you have to find how you can best do it. Because everyone's gonna be different, right? The way that you and I are trying to, approach a situation, I'm gonna need to do it one way, you're gonna need to do it another way, right? And we're both gonna have different things that motivate us to keep on that path. So I think it's really cool. So really this has all happened within the last year or so.
Yeah, a couple of years.
Very cool. So, while doing all that stuff, coaching business and everything, and also raising a newborn daughter,
And a new son. They're about a year apart.
and a new son. So you dang near have Irish twins.
Yeah.
Didn't want to wait on that second one,
Nope.
but no, you guys are young. It makes sense. I say that like I'm old.
Yeah.
I'm just a few years older, but and so how has it been just like raising the two kids, growing this business, trying to support the family and everything? Like how has it been shaping you, do you feel?
Yeah. Wow, that's a good question. Even just quick to go back to that last year when we couldn't pay rent, I kept praying, like, Lord, like, not even should I, but can I please get another job? Like something that will provide some money? And he's like, no, like, no, you're fine. You don't need it. And I'm like, great. That's awesome. So what's it been? One thing that's been really hard is working from home. Just because if I were to go away, my wife, by nature of the situation, couldn't have my help, so to speak. So it's a huge blessing. Like I can have lunch with them and interact with them throughout the day. But the downside, though, is that I have to try to figure, okay, what is it? What is the actual balance between working really hard, but then also part of why I want to work from home is so I can be present to my family. Talked to a lot of guys who work from home. Pretty common struggle is balancing that. So my wife and I, her name is Hannah. We've had to like kind of, it's a growing process, it's a learning process, but I think it's really come down to, okay, if I'm working, then, I need to be considerate of her. So if I don't want to be interrupted, but I am interrupted, it doesn't change the fact that she's my wife to whom I owe respect and love. But then it's also on the flip side, maybe we'll reconvene afterwards and I'll say, hey, would you mind knocking or would you mind just popping in and popping out or, whatever it is. That's one of the hard things. The other thing too is like coaching, again, it's like however many clients I have is how much income I have. So that's also part of the struggle is like that stressor of building a business. And we're branching out of coaching, continuing to coach, but also I want to do more like courses, content, all that kind of stuff and speaking. But yeah, it's almost like gig work where, my income kind of depends. That's been one of the hardest things, is just continuing to have hope and faith, even when it's like, oh, shoot, like a client is done before I expected. Maybe they worked really fast and they got where they wanted to be a lot faster than I thought, or whatever it is. So that's definitely one of the harder things. But at the same time, kind of like I was saying, being a rebellious person, if I'm not living life on the edge, I'm not living. It's also like kind of my jam at the same time. Like just the idea of, and that's even part of like my discernment for not being a diocesan priest, is I kind of knew I'd have job security. I knew that, which might not be the same thought process for everybody else, but I was like, I kind of know what to expect. Yeah, that was part of my discernment why I didn't think the Lord was calling me to it. But there's a lot more to that. But yeah, just the job insecurity is kind of where I thrive in a weird way, but it's also a huge stressor at the same time.
Yeah. Well, like it keeps you like motivated, right? It keeps you going, keeps you
Yeah.
pushing. Because if you know you have security, right, then you can easily get comfortable and you stop working for, more essentially, right? Like that's how I am. And my supervisors at work like have recognized that. And it's like I've been promoted. I'm a program manager now at my agency, and it's like now the goal I got to where I wanted to be, like position wise and making more and things like that. But it's like now it's like what's next kind of thing. And now it's like pushing for, like they created like an incentive program like for me specifically. So they gave me a very specific incentive for me for my job. And it's like great, that's something I'm working towards. So now I'm pushing, and it's like I'm pushing, 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 and it motivates me, right? It keeps me really engaged in the process and really engaged in the work that I'm doing.
Yeah. Something else that I'm super involved in or passionate about. We actually had 2 home births for both my kids. So my first kid I delivered. Uh,
Interesting.
Surreal experience.
Tell me about that, because I've never experienced that, and I don't think I've
Yeah.
talked a lot about that on the Matthew. I don't think I've ever talked about that on the podcast. So tell us about what that experience is like, because I'm curious. It's something
Yeah.
I'm never gonna do.
Dude, 10 out of 10 recommend. It's awesome.
10 out of 10, never gonna do it. But thank you, because I don't think my wife would go for that,
Sure.
honestly. But no, tell me about that. What drove you to that decision?
Yeah. So again, maybe this is part of my rebellious nature, but if I'm told I have to do it a certain way, I'm like, no, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it different. And so, and my wife and I, you might call us crunchy, as the kids say these days, but we make our own sourdough bread and our own yogurt and all that kind of stuff. But
Well, no, that's how you
um,
guys save money too, right?
yeah,
Like
it's also, yeah,
you make
absolutely.
things at home, and you make everything at home, and you grow stuff outside, and
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
also healthier, but that's a whole other
100%. I
conversation.
bet you save so much money just making your own granola or making your own bread or making your
Yeah.
own,
Right. Yeah.
baking
Yeah,
your own
absolutely.
food and stuff like that.
Yeah. So my wife was more convicted about doing it the first time around. My thought was like, why don't we do it at a birthing center? For me, for you, get our feet wet, so to speak, and then do a homebrew second round. But she had been talking to somebody and was like, no, why not? Like, why not just do it the first time around? Like, that's how people used to do it all the time. And I was like,
I mean, true.
fair enough. All right, let's go for it. But and the real bridge for me was someone had given me a book called Husband Coach Childbirth. Game changer. It's called the Bradley method. And so the whole idea, and there's this guy, so Dr. Bradley is actually the reason that husbands can be in the delivery room. Prior to that, it wasn't the case. There was this huge, I don't want to get into big pharma and all that kind of stuff, but kind of along with that vein in the medical industry, it got to be considered where birth was considered a procedure, or like a surgical procedure.
Mhm.
So really crazy stuff. They used to strap women down, put them in harnesses, drug them up, drug them up, drag them out was the phrase. So they drug the mom and then drag the baby out. So not the greatest thing. And, the medical industry has come a long way from that. But what we found is that, Dr. Bradley talks about how when the husband is present, that actually can help the mom deliver faster, more efficiently, and with less injuries. And the reason for that is an instinctual thing of, if you feel secure around somebody, that's when, on an instinctual level, that's when moms give birth, is when they feel secure and safe. So even if you look at like cats, for example, they do it in the dead of night when no one's looking. There's a lot of like instinctual stuff. And so he even has a story when a husband was involved, left to grab a sandwich, came back 5 or 10 minutes later, and the labor had totally stalled and regressed. So I want to be super involved. And so I basically was her doula. We had a midwife, but I was her coach. So I was with her the whole step, every step of the way. And I coached her through every contraction and I was there for her. And yeah, being so intimately involved where it almost, not like literally, but it almost felt like we gave birth. You know, it wasn't just my wife's thing, but it was like, no, we did that. Like, if I'm going to be honest with you, and we have 2 kids, that was one of the most intimate experiences I've ever had with my wife. When we're both just, working and breathing and delivering a baby. And yeah, and the funny thing, so my
Now,
daughter would,
is it like you set up like a little like pool like in the home kind of thing, or
yeah, so we thought about doing a water birth, but we ended up not doing it because it was just, we were living in a smaller place and it was just, I was like, I don't want to deal with that, honestly.
well,
It
how
just
did
sounds like a
you
nightmare.
deliver it? Was it just like laying on the ground or laying on the bed or?
Yeah, so what you do is you kind of put down like shower curtains and that kind of thing. Put some sheets on, shower curtain, another pair of sheets, and so that way you can just strip it all off and there's no, damage to the bed. So it was actually on our bed. No, yeah, it was on the ground. I don't remember anymore. It was on the bed or on the ground. Yeah, so when we did that, it was 3 a.m. Friday. It was a Friday, 3 a.m. And it's what was an end call birth, meaning the baby was just about born inside the water sac, the amniotic fluid. And so I'm waiting, and like the amniotic sac is there, and I'm like waiting for it to break because it's super slippery. So I don't have my hands there. And then I see the amniotic sac, and then it turns brown, and I'm like, what the heck? But before I could make heads or tails of it, that ended up being her hair, actually. Before I could make heads or tails of it, my wife pushed, and Kiara came out and did a somersault onto the bed. And I was like, whoa, baby! I grabbed her really quick.
What an entrance.
I know, right? 3 a.m. And yeah, it was really powerful. We grabbed her and totally fine. And then, the second time was very different. For Kiara, it was, 24 hours, very slow and gradual, very peaceful, very sacred. For our son Francis, it was like 5 hours and like super intense. So I wasn't able to deliver him because Hannah was like, don't you dare leave me right now. Like, this is going so fast.
Yeah.
So
The second
different
one, everything
experiences.
after the first one goes like incredibly fast.
Different experience, but I gotta say, postpartum, there wasn't like leaving the hospital. There wasn't going back to the hospital. It was just we turned around and we were home. That was it. And so the midwife would come in and check on us every so often. Yeah, and it was just, I don't know. It makes our home feel way more sacred too, and it's just cool, like that I can tell my kids, like, yeah, I was a part of your birth, and you don't have to do a home birth for that to happen.
Yeah.
You can still go to the hospital, but seriously, like having the dad involved is like next level. And the other thing too is when I hear about home births from different friends, the ones that have good experiences tend to have the dad involved, and the ones that don't have the dad involved. So my thought is, if you're going to do a home birth, dad, you have to be involved.
Absolutely.
But if you're not going to do a home birth, still you should totally be involved. But it's like not technically as necessary for the safety of your wife. But if you're doing a home birth, dad, you have to be involved.
Yeah, 100%. I
Yeah.
think either way, dad should be involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Either way. And so kind of, fast forwarding to today, how do you continue to live out this mission of steadfastness and virtue? Like, what do you personally do? What are the personal things that you do?
Yeah, so identity statements work really well for me. So if I want to work out, I can't make it a goal to work out. It has to be more about, no, I am the kind of person that works out. I have always struggled with waking up, getting out of bed when my alarm goes off. Even this morning, like what happened was last night, put Kiara down. My wife got home from a book study that she was at. And then, yeah, I like fell asleep, and then she woke me up because she wanted to talk. So we talked, and then my daughter woke up again, and then I fell asleep, and then the alarm wasn't there. Just, happenstance kind of stuff. And I knew I had enough time to figure it out in the morning. But either way, waking up on time is hard for me. So I have to like tell myself, no, this is like, if not, I can't say if I don't wake up, but it's more so, no, this is about who you are. You're the kind of person that wakes up. You're the kind of person that does this. You're the kind of dad that does this. Very identity focused for me. That's kind of how I get out of bed. And more than that, it's how I push harder with my business, as I have to really understand every day, what's my why? Like, why am I here? Well, I believe that the church has kind of lost its humanity. I think that most Christians, even if they're really great, quote unquote, spiritually, don't know how to function and flourish as a human being. And so my question is, what would it look like if the church was fully human and fully alive? That would be crazy for the church and for the world. And so I have to dream big, and if I don't do anything. So that's kind of my motivating principle, or my motivation structure, is I have to dream big, and it has to be about becoming a certain person, or else I'm probably not going to even get out of bed in the morning.
I love that. No, it's true. I mean, you have to tell yourself certain things. Like for me, it's like I have to have something like I'm waking up to get out of bed
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
earlier if I wanted to. Like podcasting. Like I podcast early in the morning, mostly because it's like quiet. There's no one disturbing me. There's no kids or anyone around, and so it's really quiet. Or I have to like know like okay, I'm getting up for this purpose kind of thing. If not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get up when I absolutely have to get up, and not a minute earlier
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Would you say that you're more other motivated or self motivated? Like if you want to do something, do you
It
need,
depends on what it is.
yeah.
Like some things like I'm really just like self-motivated. Like okay, if I really want to make time to, I don't know, watch a game or something and I like that's really important. Like I feel like that's important to me, I'll make it happen. But if it's like something that's like a little bit lower on the priority list, sometimes it's just like okay, let's just get this done and over with kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Because to go back really quick over the tendencies, some people are very, she calls them questioners. So they're self motivated. And if they think it makes sense or if it's reasonable, they'll happily do it. But if not, they resist. Upholders balance external and internal expectations really well. They're just kind of balanced people. Obligers, oblige to external expectations, but struggle to follow through on what they want for themselves if there's no accountability or a structure around it. And then the rebel is resist all expectations.
so yeah, I would say I'm somewhere between the first two to where I'm a mix. It really just depends on what it is. Different things I have different levels of motivation for,
Yeah. Okay.
honestly.
So kind of questioner upholder. So would you say you're more self-motivated or would you say you're pretty balanced? Like if somebody asks you to do something that you don't understand, are you happy to comply or are you going to want to know why?
It depends on where I'm at, what I'm doing, honestly. It depends on who's asking.
That's fair.
Depends on who's asking. So if it's someone and it depends on if like the amount of respect I have for them too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing too is for questioners, for example, if they believe in the credibility of someone's authority or if they highly respect their opinion, they're going to assume that what they say makes sense. But yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. So it really just depends. I think I probably question a lot, but I also go with it a lot. I also just kind of oblige a lot. So it really just depends for me what it is. But yeah, that's my struggle overall. Let's see. Anything else you want to mention before we get to towards the end of the show and we start to wrap things up?
Sure. One of my favorite scripture verses is John 10:10. I came that you may have life and have it abundantly. And I think that when we actually, integrate our humanity and our spirituality, to not make a false dichotomy between the two, but when we really integrate them, that's actually how we live life to the full. Yeah. It's not about going to church on Sunday. It's about being a follower of Christ. That includes going to church on Sunday, but it's about being a follower of Christ and being human about it.
Yeah, it includes all the other 6 days of the week too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Matthew, are you ready to jump into the dad zone?
Sure.
All right, let's jump into the dad
Absolutely.
zone. Let's see. Let me see if I can get a transition. So into the dad zone we go. So the dad zone was created to kind of bring a lighthearted little fun to the end of the podcast here. Some people say it's their favorite part. Some people say I skipped the whole podcast just to hear what they're going to say in the dad zone. For those people, if you're one of those, I know who you are. I see the metrics. Go back and listen to the rest of the podcast, and then you can enjoy the dad zone. But anyways, the first question in the dad zone: does pineapple go on pizza?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's
Pineapple
like
and ham.
3 I've had that have said that. That's crazy. That's
Now,
crazy.
not my favorite pizza anymore. That used to be my go-to. Pineapple and ham.
All right. Who are 3 people, dead or alive, that you would invite over for dinner?
Oh man. Well, one is St. Francis de Sales. He wrote a book called Introduction to the Devout Life and basis of my whole spiritual life. Geez, who else? Another person. Dude, I want to have Trump over. I want to know what the heck's going on in his brain. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm happy with a lot of the policies, but like, what's up with the tweets? I just want to know what
Truths.
that.
The truth.
Yeah, I just think it'd be a funny
It
conversation.
would be
I
entertaining.
just want to have the conversation. Who else? I think it'd be really cool. Let's get sports wise. Calvin Johnson would be cool. He played for the
Yeah,
Megatron. He played,
Megatron,
yeah,
Trump, and
St.
yeah,
Francis de Sales.
and say, wow, what a
Because with Megatron,
combo.
he was a legendary athlete. He played only for the Detroit Lions, and he retired way before anybody else thought he would.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd love to know, like, Yeah, he just sounds like an upright kind of guy. I'd love to chat with him, see why didn't you want to keep playing? Yeah, I don't know, I think it'd be a curious conversation.
Yeah, that would be an entertaining night. What is your guilty pleasure food? So what's a snack that you're trying to sneak so that the kids don't get it? Or
Anything,
the
anything my
the
wife cooks.
crunchy that breaks the crunchy
Okay, that breaks the
lifestyle.
crunchy. This is super funny. Costco hot dogs and pizza. When I go to Costco, when I'm by myself, I think the last time I went by myself, which was quite a while ago, I was like, I gotta get a hot dog and a slice of pizza.
Yeah, I think
I
you
don't
gotta
know
go.
why. Maybe it's the price that I'm just like I gotta do it. But
I think you gotta go to Costco, Matt. I
yeah,
think
I
you
think
gotta
I
go to
gotta go to
Costco.
Costco.
Say, honey, do we need anything? I'll go. I'm
Yeah,
willing. I
I'm
can
happy
go.
to go. I'll take the kids.
Yeah, I'll
I'll strap
go.
them up. I'll just don't worry about it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just don't worry about it. Last question that's in the dad zone. What is one piece of advice that you would offer to a young dad, age 18 to 22, so about your age when you had kids, or that is just starting out his fatherhood journey?
Yeah, I'd say two things that kind of go hand in hand. One, step up and be the head of the household, but at the same time, team up with your wife. And I think that when you really try to learn how your wife thinks and what her framework is, again going back to those tendency stuff, that's when you can actually like more fully become one. So team up with your wife and yeah, be the head of the household and step up and take leadership. I think that those two things are really missing in our culture right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to take charge of your home. Like that
Hmm.
it's your home. Like don't want to say like put your wife in her place, but like know your place in the home at the same time, right? Like you are the lead of the home and if you
Hmm.
have to put your foot down and you have to have that conversation, then have that conversation because you are the head of the household.
Yeah, well, in a positive way, it's not about putting her down, but
Yeah.
putting in her place is the same thing as putting yourself in your place. It's, everyone has a place. And so if we operate well out of those places, then we can have a thriving home. So yeah, putting her in her place in the sense of saying, "Hey, how do we function as a family? Okay, let's do that, you know?"
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where the teamwork comes in. I love that.
Mhm.
All right, so a couple things I think I started doing a few episodes ago is what's called a CTRA. This is for the listeners, a clear takeaway, reflection, and an action for you. So the takeaway I want you to have today is you don't have to be perfect to be faithful. Holiness isn't about escaping your humanity; it's about redeeming it. The reflection I ask for the listeners, for you guys today, is where have you confused performance for purpose? And then the action that I have for you this week, practice one small act of virtue in your home, not for show, but to reconnect to who you really are. Again, your takeaway this week is you don't have to be perfect to be faithful. Holiness isn't about escaping your humanity, it's about redeeming it. Your reflection for this week is where have you confused performance for purpose? So that's something for you just to sit on and think on as you're going about your week. And then your action is this week practice one small act of virtue in your home, not for show, but to reconnect to who you really are. So that's what you guys got going on this week. That's kind of your homework that I leave for the listeners. And then to fully wrap this thing up, let me share the screen here. So you guys can visit steadfastlife.net, steadfastlife.net, steadfastlife.net. That's where you can connect to learn more about Matthew's mission, grab a free coaching call, and discover how to bring faith, virtue, and humanity back into your daily life. Now, this is the website right here. This is where you're going to go. Go there if you're interested. It would be amazing. And then also, big thank you to you, Matthew, for joining me today on the show and reminding myself and the listeners that being a good man isn't about pretending to be perfect. It's about showing up human and always staying steadfast in love and virtue. If this episode did hit home with you today, share it with another dad who's trying to balance faith and fatherhood, and make sure you subscribe and leave a review as well. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed that juice box. I hope you enjoyed your snack. Make sure you throw away your trash so the wife doesn't yell at you or nag you a little bit for not picking up after yourself, and keep showing up, of course. And until next time, right here on the Young Dad Podcast.